Good evening and welcome to tonight's show. I'm your host, Tina Dawson, the owner of True Blue Designs, and it is truly an honor to be before you this evening. We ask that you like and share and let everyone know that we are on the air. We are streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. Also, on our YouTube channel, we want to invite you to subscribe and press the notification bell so that you are notified when new content becomes available. We are almost at 100 subscribers, and I need you to meet that goal. So please subscribe and feel free to share tonight's broadcast. Now, as we stated last week, that early voting in Georgia began on May the 2nd, and Election Day is on Tuesday, May the 24th. I want to encourage everyone again to please exercise your right to vote. Why? Because your vote is your voice. Now, last week, we had on a Democratic candidate for the Georgia Secretary of State. But tonight's guest was elected as South Fulton, Georgia's District 6 Councilwoman on November the 30th, 2021. She is here today to discuss her journey to public office and to encourage you, the viewers, to be more involved in your community. Help me give a warm welcome to tonight's guest, Councilwoman Miss Natasha Williams. Let me get you in here. Hey. How are you?
I am blessed. I'm tired, but I'm blessed.
Well, I thank you. I know you're a busy bee, and I just thank you so much for saying yes to being on tonight's show. This means more to me than you would even know. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You are more than welcome. I'm more than happy to do it. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about public service because you know that is something that is near and dear to my heart and has been for a very long time.
Yes, and I think it's also important that people share their journeys. When they see public officials on TV, that's just one dimension, right, of what they get to know about a person. But, tonight's show, I hope that the viewers, especially the ones in South Fulton, get to know you a little bit deeper, right? So I'm just so happy that you say, yeah, we've known each other for a while. Now I got you all to myself tonight. So we're going to start off, Natasha, by just letting you, tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, obviously my name is Natasha Williams. I am the councilwoman for District 6 in the city of South Fulton. And so my district starts at World Changers Church on Old National Highway, and it ends at, I believe, Creel Road, maybe Bethsaida, parts of Bethsaida. So I've got that portion of the Old National Corridor. I am, believe it or not, a transplant. I am actually a transplant. But we moved here in 1978 from Gary, Indiana. I actually grew up over in what is now District 3, behind in the Vermont Estates, which is a subdivision behind the Wayfield, which once upon a time was a Winn-Dixie, over on the Roosevelt Highway corridor. So I've been in South Fulton for, how old am I? For 43 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, for 43 years. I've lived out here. Obviously spent more of my life here than back home in Gary, but it's not, I wasn't born. I'm not a Grady baby, so I can't claim it. But yeah, so we moved here in 78. I am a graduate of Northside High School of the Performing Arts, class of 85.
Okay.
Played the viola. Went to Georgia State University, got a bachelor's in journalism,
Mhm.
with a minor in political science, got a master's in public administration with a concentration in public management. Am currently finishing up my dissertation. I'm gathering data
Oh,
for my doctorate in public administration from Valdosta State, with a concentration in public management. I specialize in organizational development and
oh,
organizational culture.
okay.
So that's kind of academic me.
Mhm.
Professionally, I'm a long-term government employee, if you will. I
Okay.
worked of most of my career has been with the state of Georgia, either with the Board of Regents or with the state of Georgia directly, which includes 2 years working for Governor Roy Barnes when he was in office.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, I've rattled around the state a lot.
Okay. Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and of course, now at Emory with you. Joined Emory last year. Well, rejoined Emory
Mhm.
last year. So now at
Mhm.
Emory University with you, as a research administrator. I do grants.
Mhm.
I've got a button somewhere that says I do grants because that's what I do. And then I guess, community service wise, it's been a lot. I've been a PTA secretary and vice president. I've been um, block captain for the neighborhood watch. I've been on the Hapeville Charter school board as a parent representative. Obviously, the sorority, all
Mhm.
the stuff that we do with
Yeah.
the sorority, and kind of now somehow parlayed all of that into being an elected official, becoming a local councilwoman.
So, what inspired you to become a politician? What was it?
It was, I think, my student activism as
Mm.
an undergrad at Georgia State University. For those who can remember the student protests of 1992,
Mm.
I was one of the cohort of students that planned and executed those protests. And it was really, I think, born out of the experiences that we had as Black students at Georgia State in the 80s.
Mm.
And so now Georgia State really likes to promote the number of degrees they confer on African Americans. Like,
Mhm.
they're best in the tops in the country
Mhm.
at conferring degrees on African American students, but that was not the case
Right.
in the 80s.
Mhm.
And so in the 80s, we were still dealing with, the racism, the discrimination, um, you know, being part of Greek life, but not part of Greek life.
Mhm.
So, you really had two separate entities. You had the NPC and the
Mhm.
NPHC.
Right.
And of
Mhm.
course, they only wanted us to participate in their activities when they wanted us to entertain them,
Right.
and step and all of that.
Mhm.
And so, having being called the N word, being give given bad grades in classes.
Mhm.
One because I had the temerity to be Black and female, but as you know, my mouth can use some guarding.
Very nicely put.
And so, as you know, I'm not docile, and I'm certainly not obedient. My deference needs some work. So I think it was just kind of all those experiences, and when we went through with organizing the protests, in the wake of the trash can incident with Phi Beta Sigma fraternity.
Mhm.
And I think it was in that moment I actually wrote an op-ed for the Atlanta Journal Constitution.
Mm.
Actually said then that I wanted to be the first Black woman elected to the United States Senate from the state of Georgia.
Oh, wow.
Um, which, of course, when you're 20 something, is like, oh, yeah, that's a pipe dream. But, as we look at electing the first Black woman governor
Mm-hmm.
in the state of Georgia, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this can be a reality.
Yeah.
Black woman as United States vice president.
Yeah.
It's not so far fetched.
No, not in today's time. Is not.
Not in today's times.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Yeah, and when you experience those types of things, growing up and in your college years, they kind of stay with you. Some people have, some people fuels them in different ways, and it fueled you to actually get into politics. So let's talk about um, some other things that you did in life that you feel prepared you for public office.
So I think the first thing is that I was really active
Mm-hmm.
as an undergrad student
Mm-hmm.
at Georgia State, um, above and beyond the sorority. So,
Mm-hmm.
Student Government Association, Black Freshman Network, Black Student Alliance. After we had the protest, because I was actually an employee. I worked my way through college.
Okay.
So I was an employee of Georgia State University during the day and a student. I was a night student at night.
Okay.
So I was like the head of the nightlife committee. And all of those things really, I think, give you leadership skills that you may not appreciate in the moment.
Yeah.
But you learn how organizations work. You learn how to get things done. You learn kind of like the hierarchy of how you get things approved. How many signatures do you need?
Mm-hmm.
If I want to reserve this room, how many places do I have to walk this piece of paper
Right.
to get signatures? And in the moment it seems like it's just a hassle.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you come to elected office, you understand how governance works.
Okay.
And then I am a political science person,
Mm-hmm.
really by degree.
Right.
Working for and professionally working for the state, particularly working for Governor Barnes.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thinks they know how things happen, but you really don't.
Yeah.
What you see in the news is kind of really the two or three hot button issues that are going to get the cameras rolling, get the newspaper reporters out to write a story. But the vast majority of what you do is really boring. I mean, it's very boring. So, I worked in the policy department. I was assigned to his signature education bill, HB 1187. So, it was a lot of typing. It was a lot of running up and down the stairs. It was, this bill is going to the rules committee. So going to the rules committee meeting to see if it's going to get on the calendar and then report back. So learning how government actually really functions, because what I'm finding as an elected official now is people don't really understand the process of government.
Yeah.
Or really understand what it takes to get things done. And that it's not quick, and it's designed to be slow.
Okay.
So this, unlike the private sector, we can make things happen overnight. Government is designed to be slow. It's designed to have checks and balances. It's designed to have 5 people sign off on a registration form, because everybody's got to make sure that you're an approved student organization, that your event is an actual, student led event. You're
Mm-hmm.
not just reserving the room for an outside group that doesn't want to pay the fee.
Right.
You've got to make sure, depending on what you're having, do you have insurance in place? Do you have, are you going to need police? So it's all of those things where people are like, well, why do I have to do this? Or why is it taking so long? It's
Mm-hmm.
taking so long because government has to do its due diligence to protect the public assets,
Right.
whether that's physical property, whether that's money, personnel. It's designed to make sure nothing happens, or that if something does happen, we've done everything we can to prevent
Right.
something from happening.
And you checked all the boxes,
You've checked all the
before
boxes.
they said yes.
Right. So, if you kind of go back to Schoolhouse Rock, I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a
Yeah.
bill. I'm
I
sitting here on
remember that.
Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
That's literally how it is. So,
Oh wow.
from the time you, hey, do we need an ordinance about that? Here, do we need a law about this? To getting it on paper, to
Mm-hmm.
putting it through the legislative process, to the back and forth that takes,
Right.
to get it to a place where it can get to a first read and get to a second read and then get to a vote. Yeah, can at the city level can take months, but when you
Mm.
start getting to the state level, where you have more people, where you need buy-in, or
Mm-hmm.
the federal level, where you need hundreds of people,
Right.
elected representatives, to buy in, it can take significantly longer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And while people are kind of focusing on the social hot button issue of the day,
Right.
there's hundreds of other things going on that no one's paying attention to because
Right.
it's boring.
Yeah. That are just as important.
Just as important,
Just as important.
but it's boring. And what I
Right.
like to tell people is that government done properly should be boring.
Yeah.
This isn't entertainment. And if
Right.
you're entertained by it, or if you see it as a vehicle for entertaining, you're doing it wrong.
Right. And the local government is our covering when you think about it, because
Hmm.
you all make sure that the rules and the laws are in place to better the community for us, right?
Right.
So we should not want you to rush to any decision, right? But I think
Mm-mm.
it's also important, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, that we as citizens stay involved, get involved, and stay involved. Because so many times things happen, and we'll say, and I've been guilty of it, I didn't know that was going on. Well, I wasn't involved, and then sometimes I lean on my neighbor, who is involved to
Hmm.
tell me and everybody else on the street what happened. But we shouldn't lean on her about that. We should all stay involved because our taxpayers, our taxes pay,
Right.
for stuff, and we're taxpaying citizens, so we should stay involved.
You know, I've been now being on both sides because, I've
Mhm.
been involved
Right.
and I know the process. So, I've seen it from a staffer perspective under the Gold
Mhm.
Dome. I've seen it from like kind of a citizen who's been involved in stuff in the community. And now I'm seeing it as an elected official. And a prime example of why you have to stay involved
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
we had a zoning case come before us where a developer was trying, a businessman was trying to work to bring a business into the community.
Mhm.
The community really didn't want,
Okay.
but they had the community meetings. Only 60 people ish, 60, 70 ish people showed up.
Mhm.
About 30, 40 ish people were in favor of it.
Mm.
And so when you have a community meeting and people don't come, what happens is that businessman, that developer is going to come and say, we had community meetings and people came to the community meetings and they are all for it.
Mm.
Well, when that's one perspective. So the it looks like, oh yeah, the community's for this. Except I've got a petition with nearly 700 signatures on it of
Mm.
people saying they don't.
Right.
And I've got emails, and some of the emails may have signed the petition
Mm-hmm.
saying that they don't want it. And I've been getting phone calls from people that say they don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
So if we only go by the developer had the meetings, 60, 70-ish people showed up, 50, 60% of who showed up
Mm-hmm.
is for it, we would be voting to put something in the community that a handful of people said they wanted,
Right.
and almost 1,000 people said that they did it.
Right.
That's the type of example of why people have to be involved and engaged and stay on top of what is happening. Is
Right.
it work? Yes. Does government have meetings at times where people are at work and can't attend?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But the avenues that are provided needed to be used.
Right.
The time to stop something like this is when it is in the planning and development phase. That's when
Mm-hmm.
your voice needs to be heard.
Right.
Because of that galvanization of residents and engagement of residents, the council uniformly and unanimously said, I know English, yeah, we're going to have to listen to the residents on this one because it's kind of overwhelmingly demonstrated that they don't want it. Even if they didn't go to the meeting, they're demonstrating they don't want it.
By side of the petition.
By signing the petition, by sending the emails, by putting
Okay.
in the public comments, by making the phone calls, that they don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
The flip side of that is that if you wait until it gets through the whole process
Mm-hmm.
and it shows up on our agenda for us to vote on,
Mm.
that's too late to come and say you don't want something.
Right.
Because by then we've gotten through all the other steps, and now we're at the point of it's just us ratifying the recommendation of planning and zoning.
Right. And I know sometimes when that has happened, I have seen where the council person over that district would have a town hall, so it's not just that the developer had a hearing, the council person sometimes has town halls to let
Mm-hmm.
people know what's coming. And the ones that I have seen were at night at 7 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would have them to say, hey, we're just trying to let you know what's coming and that we really need your voice. And then tell us, they would tell the audience, how you could use your voice, whether it's by petition, the phone calls, letters, or like you said, just showing up to when the developer has his meeting. But so there's not just that one time when the developer,
Mm-mm.
you have other times. And one time when I was serving College Park, this particular councilman, he had several meetings, back to back, like every month. He had a meeting about this one big issue about a company trying to, bring something
Right.
to College Park. And you're right. I think when I counted, there was probably, I think one time maybe 30. And I know his district is way bigger than that, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So it's important.
Well, each of our districts has somewhere between 10 and 12,000 residents in it.
Wow.
Because we're a city of about 108,000 and we have 7 districts. So every
Okay.
district has somewhere between 10 and 12,000.
Wow.
So if only 30 people are showing up,
Yep.
that is a tiny, tiny minority of people
Right.
that are swaying the city council's decision.
Right.
And it's the same way at the state level.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same way at the federal level, is that if you're waiting until you see it in the news
Mm-hmm.
to mobilize and be outraged, it's too late.
It's too late. Yeah, because so many other things have happened before it
Have
made it
happened
to the
before.
news. Right. Right.
And
Wow.
on the flip side of that, not only being engaged and involved,
Mm-hmm.
but really being educated about who you're voting for.
Let's talk about that.
Um, because everybody running for office isn't running because they want to serve
Right.
the people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are running because they want power, they want money, they want fame, they want attention, and they will pick up on whatever they think is a winning issue,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what they will feed you
That's what it is.
to
Yeah.
get you to vote for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll go, city council, county commission, state house, federal government, and they will vote their own interests. And everybody's like, well, how did this happen? Did you vet that candidate properly before you voted for them? If if a new candidate is coming up,
Mm-hmm.
and like you said, we're having an election, we're in the middle of election season. If a new candidate is coming up and cannot tell you what they are going to do in a concrete way,
Mm-hmm.
you need to dig deeper.
Okay.
Because anybody can come along and say, and I'm going to fight for more money for teachers. The question that should follow that is, that's wonderful. Now tell me what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
The state House and the state Senate are majority GOP.
Mm-hmm.
As a member of the minority party, how are you going to get them to sign on to giving teachers more money?
Right.
What is your plan for that?
Mm-hmm.
We need to do, we need to put a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage.
Mm-hmm.
We do. What's your plan for making that happen?
Right.
Where are you going to get the chickens? How much is it going to cost? How are you going to acquire them? Where are you going to get the cars? How much is it going to cost? What do you do with people who already have cars? Are you replacing their car? Are you giving them an extra car? So you see what I'm saying,
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
things,
You got to dig to the details.
right, things
Right.
sound good, and
Mm-hmm.
anybody can come up with a sound bite that's
Right.
like, oh yeah, that's great, but how?
Right.
And I think that is probably the thing I've had to learn the fastest,
Mm.
is watching people go out and have a campaign platform of no substance. Or
Mm.
even worse, they have a campaign platform of no substance and they're trying to unseat an incumbent.
Right.
And the only thing they can say is, well, she's old. Well, he's old.
Yeah, that ain't gonna get
It's time to pass the baton. Why?
right.
And what's wrong? I mean, now I think that there's a balance to be made.
Mm-hmm.
That there probably does come a point where you need to go home, but every
Mm-hmm.
person has to make that decision for
Right.
themselves.
Right. Right.
I've gotten, I think, an aunt that's going to be 100 years old that's
Mm-hmm.
still as feisty as she was when she was 40.
Right.
So you could look at her and say, oh, well, it's time to pass the baton, you need to go home. But why?
Right.
Because just because you reach a certain age doesn't mean that you are no longer able to be effective at governing.
Right. Right. Does it help to also um research that person's background? Right.
Yes,
Okay. Okay.
absolutely. And there's some people, and and particularly at the municipal and county level, maybe not so much at the state and the federal
Mhm.
because it's super expensive,
Right.
but at the local and the county levels,
Hmm.
we have candidates who run for office every 2 years,
Yeah.
whatever's open.
Hmm.
We've got people running for office. This is their fifth race. If you couldn't get elected the first four times,
Don't
is the
waste
fifth
your
one
money.
going to be the
Don't waste
charm?
your money and our time.
Is the fifth one going to be the charm?
Yeah.
And they don't run for the same office. They run for whatever is open.
Okay.
And so if you've run for city office and you've run for county office and you've run for a state office and you run for a different state office and now you're running for a city office and if you don't win this, you're going to run for a county office, you have to stop and ask the question, are you trying to do a job for the people
Right.
or do you just want to be elected?
Right.
Because all of those are different jobs
Yeah. Yeah. With different duties. Yes.
with
Hmm.
different duties, different rules, different
Hmm.
regulations. If they're scattered, what's your purpose in running?
Right. So we as constituents, we have a right to ask those questions, and we should, take those types of questions and use them as guides to have us to research our candidates. We need to be more
Mhm.
knowledgeable about our candidates before we press the button, right? Because I think
Mhm.
exercising your right to vote is step one. I think step two is to make sure that you do some type of research on the candidates that you are voting for, so you can feel that you voted for the,
Mhm.
the best candidate to serve your needs as in your community.
Right. Right. Because, and especially at the local level,
Yeah.
a lot of what I deal with is code enforcement.
Okay.
Please stop throwing your trash out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Stop dumping your trash bags in the tree line behind the Kroger, please and thanks. Because I'm gonna get the phone call
Right.
and have to go, get with code enforcement to get it picked up. And public works, potholes in the street lights are out, street lights need to be put up. Public safety, speeding, the what I don't know what COVID did and why muscle cars suddenly became popular again,
Mm.
but they are running around the city up and down the streets,
Oh, wow.
just causing wrecks and accidents and
Mm-hmm.
scaring, neighbors. And, I've got parents calling saying they're afraid their child's going to get hit if they go out and play because people are speeding through the neighborhoods. So that's a lot of the day to day.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not in this job because you want to truly do that work
Right.
and field those phone calls and solve people's problems, this is going to get really tiring and
Mm.
really old really fast.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine that phone probably rings off the hook.
Off the hook.
So
Off
let
the
me
hook.
let me ask you this. So I looked at your website that you had when you that well it's still up, that you have when you were a candidate, right? And
Mhm.
I looked at that and I saw your platform. So can you discuss a little bit about the platform that you ran on, and which item in your platform is something that you could put on your short-term goal to kind of get
Mhm.
going?
So my platform was really driven by what residents have been saying we wanted for about the past 20 years.
Okay.
So, like I said, I've lived here in South Fulton since 78.
Mm-hmm.
I've lived on the Old National Corridor since 1998. I bought my house in 1998. And so I've been part of the focus groups and revitalization studies, things that we've been wanting for 20-ish years that haven't
Mm-hmm.
been getting done.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really driven by what residents said that they wanted to see.
Okay.
Want to see economic development, a better quality of business coming into the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had some conversations with some developers about what could possibly come to Old National Highway. I've got some plats of land. Um, at least one developer's come out to look at them, and we're working on some things.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
So let me ask you this right quick. So is that part of the council person's responsibility is to go out and seek new development or new opportunities for your district?
yes and no.
Okay.
So we have an economic development director.
Oh, okay. Mm.
We have a Red Oak Main Street manager. We have the Old National District manager. And so we all are kind of really working together.
Okay.
And developers can reach out to any of us.
Okay. Mm.
Um, so it could start with a developer reaching out to me. We have the conversation and then I pass it to economic development. It could start with economic development and they reach out to the economic development director and he passes it, brings me in and passes it off to me. Okay. It could start with another council member. Councilwoman Rowell in District 1 was working with the developer and suggested that he talk to me.
Okay.
About, putting some development out here on Old National Highway. So it's a very symbiotic kind of relationship where it could originate anywhere. Okay. And we all work together to make it happen.
Okay. And so it starts one way, but then you bring it to the people so that they can hear about what's going on, right? And then it goes from there. So there is a point in the process where the people have the opportunity to become involved in these decisions.
Yeah.
Right. And so we have to take the time out to know what's going on and to get involved.
Okay. Right. Okay. And then there were some things that residents said, they were about the shopping carts. So as you know, Old National is a commercial corridor.
Uh-huh.
And particularly the Kroger, the Walmart, every once in a while the Dollar Tree and the Marshalls. But there are bus stops. At the Kroger, there's bus stops at the Walmart. And people who are doing their shopping on the bus will take the shopping carts, push them to the bus stops, get on the bus,
and leave the
carts, and the stores aren't coming and getting their carts. So one of the things, and the neighbors have complained about how bad it looks and why don't the stores get their carts. So one of the things, tackled that first coming in the door.
Okay.
And found out that the city ordinance said that stores had 72 hours after they've been notified by code enforcement to go get their carts. And what they've been doing is leaving the carts out 72 hours.
Right.
So one of the first things I did was to author legislation. I authored an ordinance to amend that shopping cart ordinance.
Right.
To say they've got 24 hours to come get these carts.
Right.
Or we're going to pick them up, dispose of them, and find them.
Right. Wow.
So it's those kinds of things that you don't know and that people don't explain to you. So if you're saying, why are these carts always sitting out there?
Right.
They're sitting out there because the ordinance says the stores have 72 hours from when they're notified to get their
by code enforcement.
Right.
Okay.
And they're letting them sit there 72 hours.
Right. But the other key too, is you said 72 hours from when code enforcement
notifies them.
notifies them.
So
So if it,
somebody's got to tell code
it's like,
enforcement to
right,
notify them. So if you
right.
don't have somebody, and look, and so at least
Wow.
3 times a week, I will, and now it's getting dark later at night. So at least 3 times a week. Monday, I'll do it on Sundays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. I will
Okay.
just go ride the corridor, take pictures of all the carts, send them to code enforcement, so code enforcement can notify them, come get their cart.
Right, right. But that's you taking the extra effort.
Right.
What if you have a district person that doesn't do that, a council person that doesn't do that?
And if you have a district person that's not doing it, then you elect a new district person named Natasha Williams.
There you go. Let me ask you this though, because I think this is important. So where can a citizen go to find the ordinances and stuff like that? Where can they go to find that information?
So every city, and I think every county as well, is going to have on their website, for the city, you want to check the city clerk's
Okay.
page,
Okay.
because there's going to be a link to take you to ordinances, resolutions.
Okay.
Or there's a website called Municode, MUNICODE,
Mm-hmm.
and you can check there to see if your city or your county subscribes to Municode,
Right.
because that is where you can go and you can look to see your city charter, ordinances, resolutions, all the legislation for your city or any city really, because as a resident, I used it to look up ordinances and resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as an elected official, I use it to see what other cities are doing about an issue.
Okay.
Like, what do other cities have in their ordinances? So if I'm
Right.
looking to drop an ordinance or to revise an ordinance or to do a resolution, I now use it as a research tool to see how other cities handle shopping carts.
Right, right. And let me ask you this too. And I want to encourage the viewers, put your comments or question, send the question in your comment box. If you have any questions, because I think this is good. I'm learning a lot. So let me ask you this. So when you said that you made a revision to make it from 72 hours to 24, and if it's a long process, I understand we only have a little amount of time. But what is the process? Because I think it's important for viewers to understand that you can't just make a change. She said that it's boring and it takes time. So if there's a change like that that needs to be made, what is the process that you had to go through just to make that change from 72 to 24?
Well, so the first thing I did was to count my votes.
Okay.
Which I know is going to sound familiar to you.
Yeah.
You got to count your votes. So, I had to have a conversation with, each of the council members to say, I want to make this change. Will you support it?
Oh, okay.
Because there's no point in putting it through the legislative process if you don't have the votes.
Okay, gotcha.
So once I had buy-in from my colleagues on the city council, then I had to get with the attorney to put together some language. Well, I guess let me back up. Code enforcement told me what the problem. I met with code enforcement, they said this is the problem. This is what needs to be changed.
Okay, got it.
And was I willing to make the change?
Okay.
Yes, because I don't want residents crawling up, crawling up my behind about these carts. So then I have to go and count my votes.
Okay.
Do I have the votes to pass this? If I put this through legislative process, do I have the votes? Okay. So I made sure I had the votes. Then I had to get with the attorney's office and say, I want to make this change to this ordinance. Here's the change I want to make. Can you draft it?
Right.
So I have to wait for the attorneys to draft it and then send it to me and to code enforcement to review. So
Okay.
we have to review the draft and say that, yes, this is what we want to happen, and send it back to the attorney. Or
Okay.
if we want to make changes to something, make changes and send it back.
Okay.
And we do that until myself and code enforcement came to a place where we told the attorney, okay, now you can put it through the legislative process.
Okay.
And what that means is we have a legislative queue where things are placed in the queue for the council to review,
Mm-hmm.
as well as department heads.
Okay.
So while the council is reviewing it, then department heads are reviewing it. So we have to have a financial impact statement. So finance has to review it to say whether or not it's going to be a financial impact statement.
Right.
HR has to review it to say whether or not there's going to be any impact to personnel, to staff.
Okay.
So
Okay.
those kind of code enforcement has to review it to say, what is going to be the impact to code enforcement.
Okay.
Because if there's any concerns at the staff financing and staffing level,
Mm-hmm.
department heads are given the opportunity to weigh in as well.
Okay.
And so all of those comments have to come in, I think, in about 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's a 2-week legislative process for everybody to weigh in. At the conclusion of the legislative process, then it gets put onto the agenda for first read.
Mm.
And it has to go through the
Wow.
first read. So we have to notice the public. It's on the agenda. The ordinance is part of the packet. It goes through first read. It's posted on
Right.
our website
Mm-hmm.
as part of the agenda packet for the meeting. That gives the public the opportunity to read it.
Right.
And if they have any comments about it, then they have the opportunity to either come and make public comments or submit written public comments. So we
Okay.
go through first read, and after first read, council members at the first read, there still may be changes,
Mm-hmm.
adjustments. Council members may want changes, adjustments. If there are no adjustments, it's great. It goes straight to a second read. If there are changes that need to be made, then we have to go back and make the
To
changes
the process. Yeah.
and put it right. And so now we're putting
Right.
it into the process for second read.
Right.
So it's got to
Right.
go, and then we start over with noticing the public. Public can come make comments. They can write comments, send emails, make phone calls, whatever. When we then second read is where we vote.
The second read is where you vote.
Second read is where we vote. So it, depending on what it is,
Right.
it took maybe 2.5 months
Wow.
to make that change.
Wow. 2.5 months
To reduce it from 72 hours
to 20 to
to
24.
24 hours, right? Because
Right.
we can only vote at a council meeting, not at a work session.
Okay. Gotcha.
So if you don't get things onto the work session agenda, it goes onto the council meeting agenda. Well, if the first read is the council meeting agenda, that means you have to wait until the next month for the
Right.
next council meeting agenda to be able to vote on it.
Wow. Wow. And I think, thank you for going through this, because I think it's very important for people to just get a glimpse of, when you're looking from the outside in, we would think, oh, this is easy. Just change it from 72 hours to 24 hours. That's easy. But as you said at the beginning of the broadcast, it's a process, right? And there's so many different stops, to this one thing that you want to get done. It's so many different hands have to touch it, or departments have to touch it before. And I was going to ask you this too. So when even though you're District 6 and you suggested the change when it becomes at the end, if they say yes, it's the change for the entire South
for the
Florida.
entire city.
Entire city.
It's a change for the entire city. So
Okay.
any business anywhere in the city y'all got 24 hours to come get these carts off the
Wow.
side of the road. Um, and so every that's why everybody gets to weigh in on it, which
Now
is
it makes sense. Yeah.
circles me back to
Right.
this is why you've got to walk this piece of paper around and get 5 signatures to reserve this room
Right.
for your interest meeting.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. See, I didn't know that. I knew about the Muni Code because I had an incident here. And I called someone that works um, in the sheriff's department.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me about the Muni Code. And I was like, and he walked me through the website and said, okay, this is where the Muni Code is. And anytime you have an issue, check here, first to see if you can find it here. And then he told me to go somewhere else. I think it was the ordinances you said.
Mm-hmm.
Go there to see if you find it there. Start those 2 places first, And I found it and I
Yeah.
used it.
Yeah.
I used it and it worked.
Right.
It
Right.
worked. Yeah, it sure did. So, I think it's important for people to know, if you're having issues in your community, where to go. Where can you go to find information? So thank you for sharing that.
Yes. No, I want people to know what I know, and I want people, to really understand how to make government work for them,
Right.
so that we don't have, people mad and protesting at the very end
Right.
because they don't like the decision that got made.
Right.
And they're not going to like every decision.
Right.
And protesting's your right, and you have the right to petition the government for redress of grievances.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the local level, a lot of things that people get upset about could have been cut off at the pass
Mm-hmm.
if they'd understood the process and been involved sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna tell you someone who opened up my eyes to what you just said, and that's Sarge.
Yes.
Giving him a shout out. When we were going through the riots and everything that was going on, he would call me and just kind of give it to me from his point of view of being law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really an eye opener. And I'm glad that you're sharing your information tonight because, as someone who works for her constituents, it kind of opened up my eyes, right, to some of the processes that someone who's really fighting on my behalf has to go through just for that one thing to be heard. So I think that's important. It's not. I think politics is not simple, right? And
No,
and,
it's
it, and
not.
it's not a slam dunk. And it is, like you said, it's a process. And I think we have to really understand that. And you're right, though, because a lot of times that we get upset and we want to picket and riot, which is you're right, right? But at least try to gather the information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where I think the change happens is when you find out why was this allowed, right? And
Right.
if it was allowed because there's a old 1920 ordinance or on the books, then really that's where our focus needs to be. It needs to be on changing that so we can move forward and going through that process, right?
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. Because even though you pick it and ride, after you finish that, there's still some work that has to be done
There's
to
there's
make
still
it change.
there's still laws that have to be changed,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to elect people who are willing to make the changes to the law that you want made.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be willing to vote people out
Mm-hmm.
if they are not delivering the legislation
Gotcha.
Not because of personality,
Mm-hmm.
not because you don't like their hair,
Mm-hmm.
not because somebody told you to be mad at them.
Mm-hmm.
Have they done the job that they were elected to do, which
Right.
is to be a good steward of public assets
Mm-hmm.
and move the city, the county, the state forward?
Right. Right.
So whether they're, black, white, red, blue, green, one eyed, one horned, flying purple people eater.
Did they do the job? Are they
Did
doing the
they
job?
do the job that they were elected to do?
Right.
And if you want somebody who's going to pass legislation and then they get in office and don't pass the legislation that you wanted,
Mm-hmm.
then vote them out.
Right. Gotcha.
Because now you're saying, okay, we elected you to do something about these shopping carts.
Mm-hmm.
You've had 4 years and these shopping carts are still sitting here.
It's still an issue.
It's still an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't addressed your issue.
Right. Right.
Now whether you like me or not, that's a bonus. But did
Right.
I address your issue?
Right.
Did I deliver development?
Mm-hmm.
That's a longer process.
Right.
But in the end of 4 years, something should have opened.
Right. Yeah.
Or, the Walmart, we're having a grand reopening of the Walmart Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
Friday, the 13th, I think. I think it's Friday. The grand reopening of the Walmart on Old National, because
Mm-hmm.
they've just remodeled that store. We
Okay.
were trying to get that store remodeled for, years. They finally, if you turn the right screw, they remodeled the store.
You're talking about the one that's on the right. If you're
Yes.
coming off 285 and you're going down,
Yeah, if you're coming
the
to
big one on the right.
the one on the right just before you get to where you turn to come to my house.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I got you.
Brand new, been remodeled. Come visit it. I'm not happy about all the self checkout, but they've remodeled the store.
Soon they're going to have
put on
robots.
new displays.
Look, soon they're going to have robots.
They're going to have robots. So I'm not happy about it being mostly self checkout, but I will take that they've upgraded the store, put in new displays, brought in new merchandise, made it better.
Right.
A better selection. So
Right.
I can get at my house what I can get in Fayetteville.
So did they have to come to you all to get the approval to do the remodel?
Because it's an existing store.
Because it
so
exists.
they just,
Okay.
Right. But it was this was in response to community concerns.
Okay.
And being willing to go sit down and talk with the manager and me, code enforcement, the manager, and talk about what the residents wanted.
Right. Well,
what they wanted to see.
Listen. That's awesome that they listened. They listened to the people that they were serving. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's a victory. That's a victory.
You know what? I'll take victories wherever I can get them.
I know that's right.
Because there's some people out there. Look, did you know I was a Trojan horse? Because one of the residents came to council meeting to, tell me that I was a Trojan horse. And I'm like, I don't think that's the insult you think it is. Have you read the Odyssey? Okay, what?
And then you have to be politically correct, so.
Like, okay, go on. But you might want. Both my parents were English teachers, so I've read the Iliad and the Odyssey, and I'm saying to myself, you might want to go reread the Odyssey and make sure that's the reference you want to use.
That you want to reference. Well, Natasha, we're almost to the end of the show. Is there any final thoughts or that you want to leave the viewers? Or,
I mean, I guess the only thing that I would say is take the time to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
It is time consuming, it is tedious, it is boring. But we can't do the job without you telling us what the job is you want done.
Okay.
So get involved, get engaged. If nothing else, I think all of us at this point have a YouTube channel. So whatever
Mm-hmm.
city you're in, whatever county you're in, find their YouTube channel, watch their meetings.
Oh, okay.
Just so you can be informed. If
Mm-hmm.
you can't make the meeting, watch the meeting. If you live in Fulton County, I recommend that you do this Saturdays while you're cleaning your house.
Okay.
Because, meetings can be 7, 8, 9 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But watch the meetings so that you can know what's going on. So that way, when people come to you and start telling you their interpretation
Okay.
of what they think happened,
Mm-hmm.
you will have watched the meeting. You know that that's not what happened.
Right. Stay involved.
Stay engaged, stay involved, ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
I have some residents that will call me every meeting and ask a ton of questions.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather answer the questions
Yeah.
than, to turn on my TV and it's a news story and somebody's run with what they think is happening and
Right.
nobody's bothered to stop and ask any questions.
Right. Right. I've told somebody this about something else, and you can know someone in the seat, you can sit next to the seat, but until you sit in the seat,
Mm,
you won't get that viewpoint,
right.
right? And sometimes, we need to. I think that we need to understand that there's just a lot that we don't know. And if you have someone that you voted in, and you have someone that really has the heart for the people, and that is there to really grow that community, I think we need to be in partnership with those people, right? And
Right.
come to the town halls. And I know in our county, like you said, they have stuff during the day when the majority of people's at work, but it's recorded, right? So you can
Hmm.
go back and you can watch the recording when you get home or when you have time. But at least, even though you weren't able to be there, you can still watch the
Right.
recording to stay engaged in what's going on.
And even if you can't be there, go pull down that agenda packet
Okay.
and, look through it. I know we've gotten agenda packets 572 pages. So,
Oh
I'm
wow.
up reading stuff at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But you can look at the agenda. You may not care about any of the zoning cases, but you're really interested in the shopping carts.
Right.
You can go to that section of the packet
Okay. Gotcha.
and read the part that you're interested in.
Okay.
Or, if you really care about this liquor store and you don't want to see this liquor store happen,
Mm-hmm.
use the public comment form. I promise you, the tide completely turned on that business because of public comment.
Right. Right. And we're your ears and eyes, right?
Yes,
So you can't be everywhere. So it is important for the community to become engaged so that they can alert you on things that you didn't even know about.
right.
Right. So that you could do something about it.
You can
Well,
do
I
something
thank
about
you,
it.
Natasha, for
Well, thank you.
being on the show tonight. I really appreciate it.
You are more than welcome. I am
Well,
happy to do it, and we still have to get together
yes.
for lunch.
Yeah, look, we will in 2 weeks.
It's
You know
weeks.
why? 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks. I got you. We're gonna celebrate. How about that?
Look, it's on me.
I got you. Well, everybody, I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in to tonight's show. You can like and share and let everyone know that it will be housed on our YouTube channel at True Blue Designs and on our Facebook page. Please take the time out to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're almost at 100 viewers, and we need you to subscribe so we can reach our goal. And then, we're going to have another goal after we reach that one. But I just want to thank you so much for tuning in to tonight. And we will see you next Wednesday, same time, same place. Good night, everybody.
Good night.